way to get started today. Thank you, praise team. Nice full stage of musicians and singers today. Thank you so much and they get here at 8 o'clock every Sunday morning to get ready to lead worship with all of you guys. So thankful for them. Thankful for the guys in the booth who are right here with them Sunday mornings to do that as well. And let's see, looking around the room this morning, where's my friend Rachel Livingood? I'm looking for you. Is she here today? Okay, I'm going to keep looking for her. I have something for Peyton that I need to give to her. We'll talk more at the end of the service and a couple of announcements about our events yesterday, but what a fun time at Clearbrook Park. Eating cheeseburgers and hot dogs. And then we had the Abba Care Walk for Life that evening and got to support them. And so far, the last I heard is they've raised over $18,000. Anybody heard an update on that? No? Okay. But thank you for being here this morning. And our time of worship continues. Let's keep worshiping. In the Psalms, there was, of course, a lot of singing, but there was also thanksgiving, and there was also testimonies. Those of you who aren't familiar with testimonies, that's when we say something in front of the congregation that the Lord has done or that the Lord is about, things that He does, something that you've seen. And what it does is it encourages the church. So if you like to hear a good testimony, you say, mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I believe that. So this is our testimony mic over here, this powerful testimony mic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some folks in just a few minutes who are willing to come and give a testimony. In church we say share a testimony. So you translate that for you church people. Share a testimony. And I want to guide you in that testimony that should sound something similar to this. We're talking about the idea of success. And this slide right here, this next one, yeah. I know they aren't perfect, but I think blank is succeeding at. I gave you a heads up about this in our church app this week, that this was coming. But you might be thinking even right now, of somebody that's in this room, maybe they're out of this room, maybe they're part of your church family, that has been an example to you of succeeding at humility. Service, family, ministry, following Jesus, faith, something like that. But you might go ahead and put them on the spot. We don't always get the opportunity to build each other up right here, right now in the worship service. But we're going to give it as a testimony to God at work in those people. Because everyone in this room, we know we're not perfect, don't we, everyone? Well, a few of us are perfect, but most of us know, hey, I'm not perfect, and so say something nice for you. I don't need to say, oh, no, it's the Lord. It's the Lord. You don't need to do that. We know that all of us are imperfect, but the Lord shines through us in certain ways, and this is an opportunity for somebody else to say it, because, you wouldn't say it. But I know they aren't perfect, but I think blank is succeeding at. We're building a definition of what it means to succeed biblically, and this is another opportunity to kind of help build that. I know they aren't perfect, but I think blank is succeeding at. Who would come and get things started? Just a little praise of God this morning. Keith, I'm surprised you're so shy.
I know. Tamara made me do it.
Tamara, stop pushing him around.
I know they aren't perfect, but I think Ruben Mendez is succeeding at so many things. He's a good example of a lot of things. But at evangelism, oh my goodness, he motivates me so much with his stories that he tells. He's in my small group, so he shares a lot there. But also, he's in the community, and he's around. He's been around. So he knows our nephew, David. And David is, pray for him, y'all. He's got a lot going on there. But David says, oh, I know that Reuben guy. Man, he is the nicest guy in the world. And he is. and there's some other folks, and I can't remember their names, but just people in the community. And he talks, whenever, oh, I know Ruben. Man, he is the nicest person in the world. And then, of course, he shares his stories about he'll see pictures on the walls, and either there's a cross there or a Bible, and he'll be like, oh, so y'all, you're Christians or whatever. But it just, anyways. So he motivates me. Ruben, you're succeeding.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for starting things off for us, Keith. Pastor Dan, everybody say good morning, Pastor Dan.
Good morning, everybody. I know they are not perfect, but I think of Keith
Hey!
as succeeding at so many things. And it was funny because as you told us to be thinking, I thought of him, and I started to get up, and he was already up on his way over. So, succeeding at enthusiasm, at service, and just letting the Spirit of Christ flow through him. You just see that love and excitement both for he and his wife, and it just encourages me to be more outgoing and sharing and serving.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Everybody say good morning, Deborah.
Good morning. I know they aren't perfect, maybe kind of close, but I know they aren't perfect, but I think Dana is succeeding at her new role here because of she grew up watching me be a pastor's wife, so I don't know if that was the reason. But she was so not wanting to ever be a pastor's wife. And I can see her sitting in our kitchen just saying, Mom, I don't know how to be a pastor's wife. I said, Dana, you just be yourself. And it blesses my heart every Sunday morning to see her going around more than I ever did. And I'm just so blessed to see her doing such a good job.
Wow, very good. Thank you. Everybody say good morning, Alethea.
Well, good morning, y'all. I know they're not perfect, but I think all the women here are succeeding. And I especially think of Pam and Stacy and Michelle Brady, Michelle Musto, Rachel, I couldn't name you all. But you are all just such motherly figures to me. And, you know, my mom, we have a good relationship, but she's not really there a lot. And so coming here, I feel like I've just gained so many mother figures, and you all are just incredible. And I especially thank Michelle Brady. I remember she came, I was deathly sick one week, and I had asked my mom and my sister, I just need a few things, and they were all too busy, but Michelle reached out, and she was there for me, and she came in, and she wasn't even worried about me being sick. I was like, you know, just get she's like, nope, come on in. She got them out for me, and she's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alethea. I like how you guys are just popping up for this one. Everybody say good morning, Lee.
Morning. I know he's not perfect, but I think that Teague is successful in his passion for the Lord. When he was up here sharing about the Africa trip,
Yeah.
I thought, oh my goodness, and he's only a teenager. So man, I see a lot in Teague. He's successful.
Wonderful. Thank you. You gotta beat Emily up here, right? Everybody say good morning, Emily.
Okay.
Oh, you
I
prepared.
made my notes.
Oh.
I cried.
Use your notes.
Okay. It's not. They're not perfect, but I think Jonathan and Heidi are succeeding in their unique story. I was thinking about Pastor Trey's request, and one couple came to my mind. I have the privilege to have worked with both of their children in the nursery and still get to take care of their son, Kyson. Kyson is such an amazing little boy. He has challenges in front of him, but I'm thankful that I get to be with him each Sunday. Along with these challenges he faces comes a great adventure for Mom and Dad. I have watched such growth in Kyson this past year and know the support he has at home has been the biggest reason for this. Not once have I seen Jonathan or Heidi waver in their love for Kyson or Raina. Yes, I'm sure they get tired and frustrated, but what Mom and Dad hasn't? But they have been such an encouragement to me. They work together, are so faithful to be here at Sunday school, even when Kyson has been up since 3 a.m. They put some of our excuses to shame. Jonathan serves in the booth of wonder, and Heidi is the backbone to our wonderful family meal. You attended our Easter breakfast and saw the organization and beautiful decorations. That was Heidi. They are serving the Lord with gladness and grace, both at the camp and in their home. I've never seen them push their children off on anyone or use their hurdles to complain or stop them. They truly amaze me. The love they pour into both children equally just amazes me. And in the midst of their unique story, Heidi has taken the time to ask me how I'm doing, share some struggles I was facing, and prayed with me. I'm thankful for Jonathan and Heidi, and I'm so glad they're a part of our family. I want to encourage them to keep on because I think they are succeeding at their life's unique story in an amazing way.
I agree. Very good. Thank you, Emily. I agree. One of my favorite parts of that, too, is watch them just being these great parents. And then, I don't know, as a pastor, it just warms my heart. They go out the front door, and Jonathan throws down that skateboard. It's across the parking lot. And I'm like, when we have a church where after church people are on skateboards in the parking lot, we've arrived at that point, right? Everybody say, good morning, Dave.
Good morning. Good morning, Dave. How you doing? I know they're not perfect, but I'm so proud of our youth group. Ricochet, right? Isn't that the name of their band?
Ricochet, it sounds like a great
Ricochet,
name.
yes. Hey, I've been coming here for 16 years, and I would never have thought Thomas. I mean, he never sang. I mean, I played my guitar for a long time at Trey's house, and I didn't really hear them really get into it. You know, it's like, but now it's like they're amazing. It's like it's just crazy. I mean, so I'm just proud of you guys. I mean, like I said, I never thought y'all would do it. I mean, Noah plays the bass. I mean, it's just crazy. Like I said, it's just not what I expected out of them. I mean, and I'm proud of them. It's like God's really using them in a way that they need to be used because they're good. They're good.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Everybody say success. Go Ricochet. What a great way to get things started. You guys just jumped right into that, too. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Success may not look like what the world thinks it looks like. Maybe the world's wrong about success. Maybe we could go to the Bible, we could find out what success really looks like. Because deep down, there are some places where I'm wrong about success and places where you might be measuring yourself according to some measure of success that you didn't realize you adopted from the world, right? So I'm giving you 3 successes during this series. Last week we saw that success is believing, and today we're going to see that success is following. So let's say those things. First one is success is believing. Today, success is following. So if you believe, and you just keep on believing, everybody say success. Satan can't stop you from believing. The world can't stop you from believing. You just keep on believing. That's success. And today, this one, you decided at some point in your life to follow Christ, and that is success. And every day you follow him, right? Today you're following, tomorrow you'll follow him again, and you'll follow him hot on his heels until he leads you across the great divide into eternity. Success. But this is a thing we say in church, to follow Christ. We say that, follow Christ, follow Christ. Do this for me. What does that mean? When somebody says, I follow Christ, what does that mean? I want to be like him. Good. I want to do the things that he does. I want to submit to him. I want to learn more about him. Yes, good. Good. What else goes into following Jesus? What goes into that? You're yielding to him, trust, waiting on him. Most of you, by following Jesus, you're reading your Bibles, you're spending time in prayer, you're following Jesus to church, following him there, using your spiritual gifts, you're following Jesus, making decisions in your life for your marriage, for your family, for your finances, for how you spend time, for whether you will do this or not do this. All those things go into following Jesus. Are you following Jesus today? If not, is there something in the way? Have you identified what that is yet? If that's the case, have you identified what that is? I promise to come back to that by the end of today's teaching, but are you following Jesus today, or is there something in the way that you need to get around, that you need to be obliterated? We'll come back to that in a moment or two. But today we're in John chapter 21. Success is following. Following is a key word in our text today. And we're going to read part of the passage. So if you would, yes, let's go ahead and take our John notebooks out and open our Bibles to John chapter 21. We are finishing the Gospel of John study together. Next week we'll be done. And then in May, we'll spend some time in Psalm 119 again. And then this summer, we'll start an ambitious Bible study in the book of, everyone? Ezekiel. Exciting experiences of Ezekiel. But today, John 21, verses 15 through 23. But we're just going to read verses 18 to 22. Okay, so we're going to read those as kind of an act of worship and honor now. So would you stand with me in the honor of the reading of God's Word? And Alex Coleman is going to come up here and read for us today, John 21, beginning in verse 18. If you would, just follow along in your Bibles as he reads this out loud.
Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, "Follow me." Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who also had leaned on his breast at the supper, and said, "Lord, who is the one who betrays you?" Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, "But Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me."
And the entire camp said, Amen. Alex, do you mind praying for this time for us, our time of Bible study that we hear from God?
All right. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for gathering us here to worship you, Lord, and to learn more about you. I pray that you soften our hearts and allow us to be receptive to the word. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Oh, you are expert Bible students. How many times did you see the word follow just now? How many times? 3 times. 3 times in our passage, and that's the second part of our passage. So one of the themes of this passage is to follow. Everyone say, success is following. Okay, success is believing and success is following. Okay, let's begin though in verse 15. You guys remember what happened last week, right? Jesus is alive from the dead. He has appeared to his disciples standing on the seashore of the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Tiberias, and he's prepared breakfast. And he has to show them that it's him with a great catch of fish. How many fish were there, everyone? Very good, 153. 153 fish. They counted them out because they were so excited about these fish. And they knew because of what had happened that it was Jesus. And so Jesus spent some time around the campfire with a group of guys that he had done this with many times in their years of knowing each other. It was informal, it was laid back, it was relational, and it was personal. And they needed this time with Jesus so that the fact of his resurrection would sink in. Sink in. We need those times that are personal, relational, and informal. So he has that with the disciples, and this is happening right at the end of breakfast. Breakfast was bread and fish. How many of you had your breakfast this morning? It was bread and fish. Okay. Plenty of fish, 153 fish. But breakfast, they're eating well, they're laughing again, they're joking, they're enjoying their time with Jesus. And verse 15, so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, as you know, Simon Peter has arisen as something of a leader. But it's strange now because Simon Peter failed. I mean, he failed hard. Simon Peter denied Christ and maybe no longer expects that he can follow Jesus. I mean, why would he expect that? He's denied Christ to a group of people using no uncertain terms, swearing in the midst of it. But Jesus decides to take Peter and speak directly to him. Now, I don't know 100%, but it sounds very much like they're all sitting around the campfire. Simon Peter, Andrew, James, Philip, Thomas, Matthew, Bartholomew, Simon, all around the campfire. And Jesus lets there be one of those pauses, guys, when we're eating and talking. And then he says something like this. Simon Peter, do you love me more than these? Wow, right in front of everybody, right? It sounds like it's public. Later, it's going to be a private walk down the beach. But right now, it sounds like it's public, and by public, I mean right there with the rest of the disciples. Why would that be important? Do you remember in the upper room, and Peter was filled with his usual confidence, his usual assertiveness, and Peter said something like this, even if everyone else were to leave you or deny you, what? I won't. He said that in front of, and now Jesus is looking at the same group of people, right in front of everybody. Peter, I want you to tell me, do you love me more than these? Because that's the kind of thing Peter, if there was another time, Peter would have jumped at it. Of course I do. And I'll have words with any man that says otherwise, kind of a thing. Right in front of everybody. But Peter's assertiveness and his confidence and his strength have all melted away by this point. And now what we find is a kind of sad humility because he has failed, and he's failed hard. Simon, son of Jonah. We have a little discrepancy between some of our text families. Some of them have son of Jonah. Some of them have son of John. We know that both of these, he's called both of these things in the Gospels. Matthew 16 tells us that, yes, he was son of Jonah. Apparently, John is an abbreviation, a shortened version of Jonah, which is why some of you are reading different things there. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And Simon Peter, I don't know. Is he even looking Jesus in the eye at this point? I don't know. And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And so Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. Because it's kind of awkward there for a moment, right? And then Jesus says, Verse 16, he said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And Peter says to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. How many of you are underlining the word love? You see that's a key word here. You know that's important in this passage. And Jesus says to him, tend my sheep. In other words, if you love me and you want to show that love for me, you need to do what? How will Peter show that he's motivated by the dearest love for Jesus? How will he show his devotion, sacrifice? Taking care of the sheep. Okay, taking care of the sheep. No doubt, he's even, everybody's kind of a shepherd over some group of people, right? But specifically, this group of people right here will be kind of under Peter's leadership in a way, because he's the bold leader. But then there will be others. We'll talk more about that later. And verse 17, and Jesus said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah. He's used his full name every single time. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And Peter was grieved. At this, Peter's grieved. Why does it grieve Peter that Jesus has asked him this question 3 times? Tell me the things that are popping into Peter's mind now. All right, we'll come back to that, yes. But why is he sad? What? I said it. Jesus must not believe that I actually love him. But I know now that he knows all things, so he should know. But he keeps asking me this. 3 times he's asked me this. He must not think that I love him, right? Now, you've heard before quite a bit about the 2 different Greek words used for love in this passage. And I give you some clip art on the reverse of your newsletter for today for your John notebooks. And I just encourage you that if you focus too much on agapao and phileo, you're probably missing the point. Those 2 Greek words, both of them mean love, and both of them are used interchangeably in the Gospel of John for the word love. And some people say, well, agapao, that's the Greek word for God's love, real love. But that's not actually true either, because there are going to be times in the New Testament where agapao is used, and it doesn't mean to love God. It means to love even worldly things. So it's become one of the more common words used for love. Agapao is pretty much always used in the New Testament for the word love. So I wouldn't make too much of the difference between agapao and phileo here. I don't think they mean much of anything. What we're supposed to be reading, what we're supposed to be hearing is the repetition. Once, twice, 3 times. Yes, they'll bat back and forth these 2 different words, but both of them mean love. And notice that each time Peter is answering it by saying what? Yes. The answer is yes. So even though he uses a different Greek word, he's still saying, yes, I do love you. And so that happens. And then as he's grieved on the 3rd time, Peter was grieved because he said the 3rd time, do you love me? And Peter said to him, Lord, you know all things. And the disciples had already said this about Jesus. Now we know you know everything. You know it all. There's no reason to question you. And they had said that before, but now he's relying on that. He's falling back on it. He says, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. He's trusting Jesus' omniscience now. The resurrected Christ knows. And it's 3 times, everybody. You can come to church and give the answer, right? You can give the churchy answer. But Jesus is kind of pointing Peter out and singling him out. Do you love me? And Peter's saying yes. And now Jesus asks him 3 times. He's got him wondering, I wonder if I do. Do I love? He's asked me 3 times. But at the last time he's grieved, and he's like, but honestly, I'm not lying to you. I love you. And you know it. These guys right here, they may not know it, but you're the risen Lord, omniscient. You know everything. You know the hearts of men. Your eyes see into past men's flesh and into their inner being. You know I love you, don't you? You know it. And he counts on this because everybody else sitting there is thinking, I don't know if he loves him or not. He's denied him. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. I want to pause here. Remind us again. Why is Jesus doing this? Why does Jesus ask Peter 3 times? Probably because Peter denied Christ 3 different times. And Jesus had predicted that he would do so, even though he was so confident, he was so cocky. And it's interesting that this rooster crows and that he has denied Christ 3 times. So now Jesus gives Peter the opportunity to declare the intensity and devotion of your love for me. Declare it in this group right here. Declare it to my face. He knows what Peter's going to say, but Peter needs this, right? Peter needs it because what's Jesus doing to Peter through all this? Why single him out? Why deal with him like this? Do you love me? Love me, show them, tell them. Do you love me? Give me that old Peter confidence again in your love for me. Give me that, Peter. Because Peter's going to need this. He's the rock. He's the leader, the bold leader. He might not be the most brilliant of all the apostles. Paul will be that. But Peter, he's going to be the bold one. He's going to be the powerful one. So why do this? What is Jesus doing with Peter? He's encouraging him. He's preparing him. We are going to need Peter. We are going to need him, right? He's going to be one of those foundation stones. He's setting him up to succeed. He's getting Peter back up on his feet again. Let's use this word, restoring Peter. He's restoring Peter. How many of you say, I'd like to be restored? But you won't let Jesus restore you. You're hanging out in your failures. You won't let him. You don't trust that he actually thinks you love him. You think you've failed too hard. Peter thought, I have no access to Christ anymore. I've totally ruined myself. And why would Christ take me back? And because I've denied him in front of everybody. And there's a very slim line that separates Judas and Peter. But there's a big difference between the two, right? Based on their actions. And Jesus is now spending this time with Peter in order to restore him. Jesus restored Peter. And aren't you glad that Jesus is in the restoration business? It's his way of setting us up to succeed. He wants to restore us. Where are you today? In need of restoration? I almost guarantee it. Aren't you glad Jesus is in the restoration business? Because what other business is there? Right? Every one of us is in need of restoration. That is all the material he has to work with. That's the only medium that God works with are people in constant need of restoration. Jesus is in the restoration business. That's how he sets us up for success in following him. Get back up on your feet. Continue to follow. Because what else is Peter supposed to do, everybody? What else is he supposed to do? He loves Jesus, but he's failed hard. What's he supposed to do for the rest of his life? He hasn't died yet. What's he going to do? He's got to do something, doesn't he? He should just quit and be done. What is he going to do? He should get back up on his feet and continue to follow Christ. And that is success for Peter. But he's going to need this special attention. So let's break for just a second and have a little fun. This is totally a survey. So feel free to answer it as honestly as you'd like. There isn't one right answer that'll get you to heaven and one wrong answer to get you to hell. But my question starts with, guys, by show of hands, how many of you would rather have either a brand new Corvette Stingray 2024 or a fully restored 69 Chevy Camaro restoration project worth the equivalent of this Corvette Stingray? Corvette Stingray. It's a tough one. Lee's, I'm stressing Lee out. Give me a second to pray over this one. Okay, now, hands down, 69 Chevy Camaro fully restored. Hey, I'm glad you answered that way, but I was planning to use this illustration anyway. So much has gone into this restoration project. All right, Lee, this is for the ladies. How many of you would rather have a brand new home or a fully restored Victorian home? Okay, a brand new home. Come on, brand new. It smells new. No one's used anything in this house. I got a couple of you. Okay, fully restored Victorian home. Okay, now Ladies answering about the Victorian home, guys answering about the Mark, I could have said 67 Shelby Fastback GT 500. How about that? All right. I thought about you, and I was like, this illustration is not going to work for Mark. Mustang guys, I don't know, you Mopar guys that are out there, we could have done a better one for you. But anyway, I just think of that 69 Camaro. Anyway, why most of you picked the restoration project, I picked the restored one too. Why? Character. Potential. Often it's highly customized, right? It's the way people want it. I like that about it. It's sturdy. Right? There's also the aspect of it's not cookie cutter anymore, right? There's memories, there's character. We keep using this word character that's in it, right? If we were talking about motorcycles, we would say this one has soul, right? As a fun illustration, but just to say this. One of the reasons Jesus may very well love a good restoration project is because he enjoys giving it a lot of soul. One of the reasons. The other reason is all he has to work with. But dads who've worked on a project with your son, hopefully we have some of those in here. Every time I point to that motorcycle, it was I bought it really cheap, and I usually brag about how I bought my motorcycle $1,500. And then Thomas and I, when he was younger, we spent a lot of time just making it a lot older than it already was. And now, to me, I would never get the value that Thomas and I have into that restoration project. You put something into it. And for every single believer in this room, you are one of those restoration projects. And maybe the worse off you are, maybe the more soul goes into you. But it's the way that Jesus sets us up to succeed. And he's restoring Peter. And let me move along a little faster now. This won't take but a second, the second point, because I didn't want to miss this, but there's the repetition in these verses of the word love, verses 15 to 17. There's the repetition also of another subject. What is that other subject besides love? What is it? The sheep. The sheep. Follow me comes later, but this is the sheep. Tend my sheep, feed my lambs, take care of my sheep. Jesus restored Peter to the work of shepherding, to the work of a shepherd. Isn't that interesting? Peter, it really is this. If you really do love me more than everybody else, show me by, everyone, shepherding. Shepherding. Jesus restored Peter to the work of shepherding. So you can underline each of those. John is doing it by subject now, and the subject is shepherding. Tend my lambs, feed my sheep, however you have it in your translation. Shepherding. And it's exciting to know that Jesus wants his people to have shepherds. Somebody to guide, somebody to care for. What do shepherds do? Somebody to protect, somebody to lead to green pastures, somebody to feed, right? Somebody, Jesus is about to leave. Of course, his Spirit's coming, but Jesus is about to leave after this 40 days of post-resurrection appearance ministry. Jesus is going to leave, and just like Paul and Peter will do later, he wants his people cared for. And Peter, I'm going to give you the responsibility of looking after my sheep while I'm gone. So if you love me at all, if you ever loved me, care for my flocks. I love them. And Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 11, I am the good shepherd. And the good shepherd does what? Lays down his life for the sheep. Peter, we've got that in mind for you too. If you love me, if you ever love me, then you care for my sheep. You take care of them. Jesus wants his people to have shepherds. In the Old Testament, he had people like Moses, who was a literal shepherd and a shepherd of his people. He had the judges, people like Samuel, and he had the kings, and the kings were the shepherds. And guess what? We come now into the New Testament era, and Jesus wants his people to have shepherds, someone that'll be perfect for them. Someone that will take the responsibility of feeding and teaching and guiding. And I'm going to give you something else in just a second, but I have to stop and spend a moment on this. Our Catholic friends interpret this passage to mean I won't say this correctly, but something like Jesus is establishing for all time an apostolic rule that will govern all the churches worldwide for all time. The Pope, etc. Priest system, that. And they've totally missed the point. How do we know that's not the case? Because Peter receives this from Jesus to be a shepherd. He writes a letter, 1 Peter chapter 5. We won't go there now, but if you just jot that in your John notebook, 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 through 4, Peter says, look, you other shepherds, he's talking to the other shepherds other than himself. You elders, shepherd the flock of God that is among you. Care for them, love them. God's people have always had shepherds. They'll continue to have shepherds. And Peter sends a letter to other shepherds saying, you shepherd them and you love them and you care for them the way Christ would. He is the good shepherd and we're just under shepherds of Christ, but you keep shepherding God's people, Peter tells them. And Peter is going to use in 1 Peter 5, 1 through 4, almost the exact words that Jesus gives to him right here in John 21. Feed my sheep. He's repeating what Jesus said to him on the beach that day. And he's saying it to these other elders, which means Peter did not expect to be the only shepherd. Jesus was establishing the shepherding role. In Acts chapter 20, verse 28, the Apostle Paul is on his way to Jerusalem, and everybody's saying, Paul, don't go there. Don't go to Jerusalem. And one of the groups of people he meets are a group of church leaders, the elders, the pastors, the shepherds. Pastor means shepherd. They come from Ephesus to meet Paul. And Paul has some things to say to them, and he encourages them to shepherd the flock of God. So Peter wasn't the only shepherd, not by any means. Jesus is now setting his church up to succeed by giving it the shepherding role. Aren't you glad that Jesus is in the shepherding business? It's one of the ways that he sets us up to succeed. Now, a quick illustration for this. I've been here 20 years, so you guys have heard all my stories. So here's it again. When I was a little kid, it was Saturday morning cartoons, right? Everybody, Smurfs, Hanna-Barbera for the Snorks, Transformers, Saturday morning. So mom and dad are asleep, and my sister and I'm preschool age, I don't know, 3 or something, maybe littler than that. And my sister's 2 years older than me, and we've got the house to ourselves, which was really safe. So I went. The story goes, I went into the kitchen. They had an electric cooking range. Maybe it looks something similar like this. And I climbed up on there, and I turned on every one of those knobs. Now, thankfully, my pajamas were made of asbestos. That was our generation, right, guys? Shoot, man. And it only made me better for it. And they just kind of melted. But I was just sitting on top of the cooking range, turned them all on, right? And my sister, being a good older sister, saved my life, right? She shepherded me. She ran and got mom and dad, and they came in and beat me and beat. No, they were like, they could not believe, that I didn't get burned at all. Oh, that has very little to do with today's sermon, other than to segue into this. This is just Pastor Trey's weird way of having fun. Is one of the roles that a shepherd has is to do just this, to keep Christ, to keep the Bible, to keep church on the front burner. right? If all I ever do in preaching and teaching and leading a ministry system here is create the opportunity for you to come and all of a sudden church becomes front and center, Christ becomes front and center on the front burner, that's one of my successes, is to just keep it on. Hey, don't forget, you got this simmering back here. Don't forget about that. That's back there. Missionaries, they visit with us, and what do they do to us? Missions for us will be way back here on the stove. And missionary comes, and they tell us their stories and show us their pictures, and all of a sudden that pot is on the front burner, right? We're thankful for them doing that. Evangelists do the same thing when it comes to evangelism. You manage your detail types. Sometimes us creative types, where we forget about the details. They're on the back burner. We'll worry about that later, right? But you manager types, you keep details on the front burner for us. We're thankful for that. Shepherds will just keep the things of God, keep the church, keep the Bible on the front burner. And that's one of the ways that Jesus uses shepherds, just to keep our attention, our focus where it ought to be. Jesus restored Peter to the work of a shepherd, and lastly, to the life of a disciple. Jesus restored Peter to the work of a shepherd and to the life of a disciple. Now, this part is probably the most interesting, and it won't take very long to explain it, but I want to show it to you. But first, let's read this together. Jesus restored Peter to the work of a shepherd and to the life of a disciple. Once again, if you turn that newsletter over, you're going to see some clip art pieces for you to glue in your John notebooks that will have quite a few notes about what we're about to cover. But take a look at verse 18 with me, if you will, because now Jesus has spent some time with Peter. Peter has answered the 3 questions correctly. He's reaffirmed his love for Jesus, which is important for us. And verse 18, Jesus says, "Most assuredly I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished." How many of you girded yourself this morning? I guarantee you did, but sorry, this is an older translation, but gird up your loins. You guys remember talking about that? Remember how Peter girded up his loins before he jumped into the ocean? Right, that was the last time this word was used, by the way. Jesus was, I don't know, he may be making a reference to that. Like a few minutes ago, Peter, you were out on that boat, you found out it was me, and you just girded it up and jumped in. And your days of just doing whatever you want like that, they're done. That's over. Your impetuous, assertive, kind of just dive in, doing whatever you want, that's over. And Jesus is using what some scholars think is probably a proverb at the time. And it's a pretty good proverb. I don't have a way to... I tried to give an equivalent, but it just sounded silly. But I say to you, when you were younger... When you're young, you just... How do I say this? You just do what you want. When you get older, you need people to take care of you. And so you got to go where they're leading you. It was kind of a proverb, and it's something that everybody understands. But here, Jesus is using it on Peter to predict something. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands. Now, I know this seems a little far-fetched, but stretch out your hands in this day and time was understood to be a reference to crucifixion, because that's how common crucifixion was among the Roman Empire. So stretch out your hands. I'm going to say here's a similarity. How many of you have heard the expression, got their necks stretched? Right, good cowboy movie. What does that mean? Somebody's got their neck stretched. Say, oh, they went to the chiropractor, and now they have relieved the stress on their vertebrae. Is that what they're talking about? No, they mean they got hung or hanged, right? They got hung. And so you would know that, just like people in Jesus' day would understand that if you use this sentence, stretched out your hands, you were talking about crucifixion. It's not a stretch to stretch. It's not a stretch. It's not a stretch to say that Jesus meant for Peter to understand that he was predicting Peter's crucifixion. And this he spoke, now this is an intense verse. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. For some of us, that's worth underlining that whole sentence. Every single one of us in this room is going to die. Let me say this in a way that's, understand the context of how I'm saying this. You want to die playing? Where do you want to die? You want to die on the golf course? Seriously? You want to die chasing your dream? Seriously? You want to die chasing your version of fun? Seriously? Or would you like a death that glorifies God? How many of you would be so weird as to aim at such a death? Everybody dies, guys. Everybody dies. And I don't know if it's much consolation to say this, but you can die a death that glorifies God. And I think we have to determine to do so ahead of time. Jesus determined to do so ahead of time, everybody. In John's gospel, several times we have a reference that says, Jesus said this, signifying by what death he would glorify the Father. Everybody, by what death did Jesus glorify the Father? Through crucifixion, obedience to the cross and suffering and death. And Jesus is saying, Peter, you're going to get that same chance. And Peter is going to pick that up. And by the time he writes his epistle, 1 Peter chapter 4, I think verse 11, he's going to indicate to those Christians, you can die a death that glorifies God. Everybody, you can. You can. And when he had spoken this, Jesus looks at him and says those two words, everybody, follow me. Discipleship means following Christ. Follow me. And by the time those words were written, Peter was dead. John's gospel is written later. By the time this chapter was written, Peter had been crucified in Rome by Emperor Nero, just like Jesus told him. That's his disciples' path, everybody. We're going to go ahead and sign folks up. How many of you would like to have that disciples' path? How many of you would rather have maybe a slightly different disciples' path? Well, the good news is disciples' paths are custom made. And that's going to be my point that I hope you take away. Because watch what happens. So Jesus says to Peter, look, follow me. In other words, your way of following me, Peter, and it may not be everybody's way, but Peter, it's your way. Your disciples' path is take care of my sheep. Love my sheep, and you love them until the point that it kills you. That's your path. Follow me. That's your way of following me. Follow me. Every believer must follow Christ. There is not another version. I know there's been a debate about that in churches in the past 30 years or so. There isn't another Christianity of, well, there are people who follow Jesus, and then there are these. No, there's not. Right? Everyone follows Christ. Peter's going to have a way of following Christ that's going to lead to a death that glorifies God. And in the end, if we're all going to die, that's not quite so bad, is it? But notice what happens in verse 20. Peter turned around because, oh, by the way, Jesus says, follow me. Is that literal or figurative? Somebody say both. So at this point, they've been talking around the campfire, and Jesus means it both. All right, Peter. Hey, follow me. In other words, let's walk. Let's walk. And they don't get very far, and who's back there? John, the beloved disciple, what's he doing back there? Starts with an F? He's following, okay? Key idea for us. He's following also, and then watch this. This is great. This is really great, I promise. Who also had leaned on Jesus' chest at the supper and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? And Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, but Lord, what about this man? Now, real quick, why did John, who's writing this, need to remind us that it was John who said to Jesus, who's going to betray you? Why did John just tell us that? Did you guys know who John is? Why remind us that Jesus, oh yeah, this is John. And by the way, John was the one that was leaning on Jesus at the Last Supper and asked Jesus who's going to betray him. Why tell us that? It's something important about John. John was known, it was common among the disciples, that he was the beloved one. Jesus loved him. And one of the reasons, I don't know how to understand, I wouldn't take that to mean he had favorites or whatever, but probably one of the ways to understand it is John, they probably all agreed, of all of us, John loves him most. I mean, who else is laying on him at the Last Supper? And when they're sitting around eating the Last Supper, John's just laying against Jesus, just loves Jesus so much. And they want to know who's going to betray him. Peter wants to know who's going to betray Jesus. So Peter asks Jesus, hey, Jesus, by the way, who's going to betray you? No, Peter does what? Hey, John, you ask him because... Exactly. And that's important because now Jesus and Peter are walking down the beach, and Jesus has just predicted Peter's death by crucifixion, and they look, and there's John trailing behind, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, right? And Peter goes, what about this guy? In other words, what's going to happen to him? Right? What's going to happen to him? Is the same thing going to happen to him? Now, help me out, everybody. Peter's dealing with this. He's got a flood of emotions. He's got a flood of thoughts. Why would Peter ask that? What do you hear in his voice? Well, what about him? And the timing. Jesus just told him, Peter, you're going to shepherd my sheep, and you're going to live for me, but it's going to lead to your crucifixion and death. But Jesus, what about him? Why? What's going through his mind? Right. Is he getting crucified? If we're all getting crucified, I'll feel a little better about that, right? Kind of like, oh, good, we all got Fs. So I'll tell mom and dad, well, we all got Fs. And mom and dad will say, oh, well, never mind. Good for you, right? You're average, right? We would never say that. But in other words, what's the deeper question in Peter's mind? Do you love him more? He could see this prediction of his crucifixion as a punishment for his denial. In other words, that's kind of almost Peter's way of not saying it, but saying, do you love me as much as you love? Now, John, as best we know, strongest support is that John, of course, he spent some time on Patmos, but he's going to die as an older man in Ephesus. He's going to be shepherding. He's going to go through trials of his own, but he's not going to die this way, right? So that's true. But everybody, Jesus is having none of that. It's like, you do not compare my love for you with my love for John. Do not compare John's disciples' life with your disciples' life. Give me your different translations of Jesus' answer. Whether I may want him to stay till I come back, let's just say. I may want John to be alive, but either way, what does Jesus say to Peter? That's not your business. What is that to you? That's no concern of yours. Everyone has their own path to walk. Yours is going to lead to the cross. You don't worry about John's. You decide in your own mind that you're going to follow me even if nobody else is ever following me, that you're going to do it. And I'll love you just the same as I love John. And you'll have a witness and a ministry just like John. And everywhere you went in that time, you would have heard of Peter. Everywhere. And in a lot of churches that you went to at that time, you would have heard of John, the beloved disciple. Don't you worry about John. And don't you worry about any other Christian. You just follow me. Then this saying went out, and John includes this, he had to correct this, verse 23. The saying went out among the brethren that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but if I will, that he remain till I come. What is that to you? What is that? That's none of your business. It's none of your concern. Your concern is follow me. Everybody, you don't have to impress anyone in this room. You have one concern. Everybody say, follow Jesus. You do not have to be the next Billy Graham. Everybody say, follow Jesus. You don't have to be the next Elizabeth Elliot. All the ladies in the room just say, follow Jesus. We don't need Heaven's saying, we don't need another Billy Graham, and we don't need another Elizabeth Elliot. We had those people. They had a ministry. It was unique. There will never be another Charles Stanley. There will never be another Chuck Swindoll or David Jeremiah. And thank goodness, there will never be another Jonah. There will never be another Apostle Paul. But there's only one of them, and there's only one of you. And Jesus has designed, he has custom made a disciple's life that suits you. And your only business needs to be, everybody say it, follow Jesus. Aren't you glad that Jesus is in the discipleship business? He's in the discipleship business. He wants to put each one of us back on our feet to keep following him and follow him to death. Keep putting us back on our feet. And that's his way of setting us up to succeed, because success is following. Would you say that with me? Success is following. You ever got into the business of this? Oh, I wish I had their Christian life. You ever done that? Oh, I wish I had so-and-so's faith. I wish I had so-and-so's ability to love. I wish I had so-and-so's spiritual life. What's the danger of doing that? You don't see the behind the scenes, and the behind the scenes could be that they went through some really hard stuff to be the prayer warrior that they are. They went through some difficult times to have the faith that they have. We always want the stuff people have without the ability to do the work that they've put into it. And we just don't know what they've gone into. So let's stop doing that, and let's stop comparing ourselves to each other, and be glad that Jesus has called each one of us to follow him. Everybody, would you say success is following? Jesus wants to set us up to succeed. He's custom made a discipleship path for you that he wants you to follow. And it's not like John's, and it's not like Peter's, it's not like Billy Graham's, it's not like anybody else's. It's designed to be for you to follow Jesus. You can follow Jesus. Maybe I should say that to folks in this room today. You can follow Jesus. He will give you his word. He'll give you his church. He'll give you his spirit. He will answer your prayers. He wants you to follow him. You can follow Jesus. It's not too much to expect. It's not beyond our reach. Jesus says, follow me. And he's not saying that just to doom us. He wants us to follow him. He makes it so that we can follow Jesus, and following him is success. But right now, there's something in the way. And only you and the Spirit know what that is. Something is in the way. What is it? You need to get around it. You can't go any further following Christ than to get past this thing. For Peter, it was his utter failure. He's going to have to work through that. And he will. We know he does. And he dies a glorious death for Christ. But what is that thing in your own life? Is sin addiction maybe? Some sin habit that's crept in that you think will just always be there? You've just gotten used to it being there? What is that thing? Something that you've done that you can't get past? What is the thing? An idol? Oh man, there's thousands of idols. It could be one of those that's there. You say, Jesus, you're great, but this thing obviously is greater because it gets first place in my life. Is that in there? What is there? This is how we're going to end today, is by praying a prayer that sounds something like this. Father God, what is keeping me from following Jesus? I may not even know what it is. What is keeping me from following Jesus? Please help me get around that. All over the room, this is how we're going to close. Would you please just commit that to a few moments of quiet prayer while we're about to sing this song? Just a few moments of quiet prayer all over the room. I'll stop talking, just give you some time to do some business with the Lord.